In a world derived from hope, peace, and overall structure, it's hard to find a reason to keep going, as life seems empty and not worth living. But despite the desolation and negativity of the Fallout world, people still live on, all in their own ways. One of the ways people seek mental refuge from the radiated wasteland is through the radio stations they can tune into, just like the protagonist can do in all the 3D Fallout games. While there's been a couple of radio stations Pip-boy enthusiasts could play whilst on their journey, the most noted ones seem to be Galaxy News Radio, Radio New Vegas, and Diamond City Radio. After all, they played such memorable, enjoyable songs from the 1930s to the 1960s, and the host had personality and gave updates about the setting in question, so it was more than just the music that gave these stations charm. The tune of Way Back Home works wonders while the lone wanderer looks for their dad. Big Iron provides an appropriate narrative as the Courier 6 hunts down Benny, and the Soul Survivor probably finds Crawl Through the Fallout a little too relatable for comfort. But Fallout 3 wasn't the first game to include these old-timey tunes. It actually goes all the way back to the first two games. Fallout 1 and 2 had Maybe by the Ink Spots and A Kiss to Build a Dream On by Louis Armstrong respectively, as songs that played during the opening cinematics. After all, a lot of the series' vibes came from the mid-20th century, so adding these tunes were a small but nice touch that just made sense. So Bethesda decided to expand the idea with Galaxy News Radio and Fallout 3. These radio stations provide a nice way for the people in Fallout to escape their painful present. It brings them back to a better world, where people can live a normal life, and have a lifestyle that make going on so worth it. Now, while some may see this as a way to reminisce about the past, I think these songs could also serve as a beacon of hope in a way. While the old world was better, it also had its fair share of war, violence, and unrest. So if people found ways to deal with the turmoil in their lives in the past, and still live a happy, normal life, then maybe, just maybe, they can do the same in their lives. Heck, even the sad songs probably lift up their spirits. After all, the worst thing those people sang about was heartbreak and loneliness. Nothing at all about a possible nuclear fallout. When making Fallout 3, Bethesda really wanted to emphasize the significance of Galaxy News Radio to the people. It's so important to the people of the capital wasteland that even the Brotherhood of Steel guards the place to make sure information can spread, and so souls can be soothed with the timeless songs. After all, the Enclave was spreading lies and their malicious propaganda on their airwaves, so the people of the wasteland needed a place where they could hear the truth without it being filtered through an agenda. And considering how powerful the Enclave was in that game, it only made sense the Brotherhood had to protect Galaxy News Radio. While Diamond City Radio doesn't have the same protection, it doesn't really need it considering how sheltered it is from the outside. Bethesda knew players were going to be so into the radio stations, so they had to make Galaxy News Radio and Diamond City Radio actual places the player could visit in their respective games, with quests that relate to the host in some way. It just made so much sense. After all, who wouldn't want to meet the legendary Three Dog after listening to his interruptions in between songs? He's just so upbeat and cool. Travis, well, he's nowhere near as personable, but it's nice to put a face to the voice on the radio. Speaking of which, most of you are probably aware of the quest of Fallout 4, where, after it's completed, Travis gains a whole lot of self-confidence, and as such, his lines and demeanor completely change.
This next song, it's 60 Minute Man, and whoa boy! Okay, never mind.
Now it's 60 Minute Man by Billy Ward and the Dominoes, right here on Diamond City Radio.
The vibe of Diamond City Radio is significantly impacted because of this, and Travis will even thank the player sometimes in between songs on his newfound attitude.
Folks, I'd like to take a moment for something a little more personal than usual. As I'm sure you know all too well, I haven't always been the best at this job. Hey, let's face it, I've been pretty terrible. Thanks to the efforts of a few of my friends, I've decided to change how I look at things, how I live my life. I'd like to just take this opportunity to thank the Vault Dweller for lending me a hand. I really do appreciate it.
What some may not know, though, is Three Dog from Galaxy News Radio can also be completely changed, but once that's done, he never speaks again. At least, not on that player's save file. You see, Three Dog can be killed in Fallout 3, and after his death, Margaret, who is the station's technician, will cut in sometimes during the broadcast and express her dismay over the host passing.
This is Margaret, and you're listening to, oh, the hell with it. Listen to some music and pray we find someone to replace Three Dog.
The same thing happens in Fallout 4 as well. Whenever Travis is killed, Shane Kowalski takes over, and he tries his best to be a moving host for the people of the Commonwealth.
Just 'cause Travis is dead don't mean we shouldn't all enjoy some music. And if you'd like to enjoy some fresh, clean water, you know where to find me.
Speaking of other things you may not have known, it seems the songs Fallout Shelter, Atomic Cocktail, Massachusetts, and a Perry Como song were going to appear in Diamond City Radio, as there's voice lines from Travis that mention these tunes, but they were cut for unknown reasons. Anyways, getting back to it, having Galaxy News Radio and Diamond City Radio have physical locations makes me wish we could have met Mr. New Vegas in Fallout New Vegas. I have no doubt he would have had some great dialogue to exchange with the Courier 6. It would have also been nice to do a quest room in that game too, considering how fun New Vegas is with the adventures it sends players out on. Another thing that's so great about these radio stations is, to me, there's so much more than just small additions that enhance the world of these games. The music from these stations expanded far past the platforms I played them on. I bonded with my friends over the many licensed songs that were featured in these games, despite the fact they're from decades ago, and we would have never thought to seek out or listen to them if it weren't for this franchise. And I'm not talking about just casually bringing these songs up in conversation every once in a while whenever we talk about Fallout. We've made references to these songs even when our conversations weren't about video games, let alone this series in question. For example, one of my favorite activities I've been doing recently is going to my friend's house, then playing Supremacy on Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PS5, all while listening to some of the songs from their Fallout radio stations. All my buddies vibe with this decision, with one of them claiming, if I was a stormtrooper fighting for the Empire, this is what I would be listening to. It's also something that's always been with me ever since I played Fallout 4 in 2015. My music playlist has always had some of the songs featured in Diamond City Radio, and it was one of the things me and one of my closest friends bonded over when we met in middle school. I couldn't tell you how many times me and him would say wham, bam, alakazam together because of our shared love of orange-colored sky throughout the years. This song would later spark my curiosity again when I was browsing Lady Gaga's discography and saw that she covered the song during a live performance, which to me was an amazing discovery as I found out one of my favorite artists recorded her own version of a song I hold near and dear to my heart. It's also a really good cover too. It hits all the same good notes as the original, but has its own modern jazz spin on it. Getting back to silly phrases from these songs, me and my friends would often quote, "He's hacking and whacking and smacking" from Butcher Pete for no particular reason. It extends beyond my friends too. I knew my dad listened to this music from that era, so I would ask my dad if he knew about certain songs featured in Diamond City Radio, and sure enough, he knew Butcher Pete, Rocket 69, and Way Back Home, among other tunes from that station. My dad had vinyl records from decades past, so I figured he'd know at least one of the songs featured in Diamond City Radio. He even gave me and my brother some information about those songs too, like little tidbits about the artists and such. I bet he was surprised when he heard me and my brother ask him if he recognized any of the tunes that were playing on our Pip-boys. The radio stations in the 3D Fallout games were more than just small additions to give players something to listen to as they were heading to their next destination. There were special parts of me and my friends' playthroughs of these games, and it seems a lot of other people have had the same experience with these radio stations too. There's a good amount of Fallout memes that make the classic songs the main focus, or have them in the background, so it seems this phenomenon is kinda universal. People have even made charts for a few of these songs for Rock Band 3, so it seems the love really does run deep for these songs. Fans of this series have gone out of their way to make their own radio stations too, with some of them including a host who provides some commentary between songs. The Fallout 4 and 76 trailer features songs from the main radio stations of those games too, further highlighting their significance. Even the writers for the TV show knew how much players loved the stations, because not only does the series have a couple of songs that were featured in the games throughout, but there's even a small piece of the second last episode where Thaddeus tunes into a station to drown out the wasteland's ambience, and even has a conversation with the host over said station over the intricacies of the songs. All things considered, the radio stations are just one small part of the enjoyment of these games. After all, Fallout was able to keep players hooked with its memorable characters, fun RPG aspects, and deep story among other things, so the games really shine in what they provide. But despite all these great things, the number one thing I'll always remember Fallout for is how the radio stations, mostly the ones I mentioned in the video, furthered my knowledge on older music, partially formed my music taste, and provided us a way to bond with other people. One of the smaller things about Fallout is certainly one of its biggest things.